All right, so we do have a couple of announcements at the start, and then we will, of course, we, the Imperial, we take your questions. So here we go. Thank you again for being here. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will travel to Brussels, Belgium, from April 2nd to April 4th. In Brussels, Secretary Rubio will attend the NATO Foreign Ministers meeting to discuss security priorities for the alliance, including increased allied defense investment and securing lasting peace in Ukraine. Secretary Rubio will also discuss the shared threat of China to the Euro-Atlantic and Indo-Pacific alliances at a NATO session with representatives of the Indo-Pacific partners. Lastly, the Secretary will discuss plans for the Hague Summit this summer. Further, we are heartbroken by the tragic news out of Lithuania that 3 of our 4 U.S. Army soldiers assigned to the 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team, 3rd Infantry Division, were found deceased today. We offer our deepest sympathy to the soldiers' families, friends, and the 1st Armored Division. We are grateful for the extraordinary efforts carried out by the U.S. Army, the Lithuanian Armed Forces, and civilian agencies over the past 6 days. In addition, as announced over the weekend, the United States will provide up to $2 million through Burma-based humanitarian assistance organizations to support earthquake-affected communities as an immediate response to the March 28th earthquake. A U.S. aid team of humanitarian experts based in the region are traveling to Burma now to identify the people's most pressing needs, including emergency shelter, food, medical needs, and access to water. Our disaster experts, including those based in Bangkok, Manila, and Washington, D.C., continue to monitor the situation with coordination with U.S. government counterparts in the region. The United States stands with the people of Burma as they work to recover from the devastation, and we offer our deepest condolences for the loss of life in this obviously extraordinarily difficult time. Next, the United States is pleased to welcome home Faye Hall from Afghanistan. In the words of Secretary Rubio, President Trump's commitment to the American people is clear. We will not rest until all Americans detained in Afghanistan and held hostage around the world are brought home. The U.S. government's highest priority is the safety and security of the American people, wherever they may be. Finally, tomorrow, April 1st, Secretary of State Marco Rubio and First Lady Melania Trump will host the 19th Annual International Women of Courage Awards ceremony here at the State Department. This prestigious event will honor 8 extraordinary women from around the world who have demonstrated exceptional courage, strength, and leadership in advocating for peace, justice, human rights, and the empowerment of women and girls. And now, I'll turn it over to your questions. Yes.
Sorry,
Matt
did
Lee.
I speak out of
Matt
turn?
Lee, oh my goodness. Almost out of turn. Matt Lee,
Sorry.
What can I do for you?
Extremely briefly, just on the Burma,
Yes, sir.
Kuwait. Do you know, has the team gotten there yet, or are they still on?
We know they're in the process. I think we'll have a firm word perhaps this evening, but they're in the process of being present right there.
Okay, and then secondly, I just wanted to know if you had gotten any more clarity on what I asked earlier about these letters from embassies in Europe going out to private companies and various American spaces and other type of things, telling them that they are at risk of losing funding if they do not comply with the administration's DEI policies.
Well, I think this is a situation of certainly an effort to comply with the executive order from the president, and it is essentially a self-certifying statement to the local consulates and embassies, those who are conveying the nature of what the American executive order was and what's expected. And so it's something that there's a dynamic when it comes to what people have already certified to, what if they may have issues, but it really is just I don't want to say informational, but it's a dynamic where the companies involved get the notice about what we expect here when it comes to products and doing business with companies and contracts and what their own policies are. So it's true, but it's again a self-certifying dynamic, and that's about it with that. All right. Yes. Andrew Mitchell.
Following up on one thing and then two other quick points. On the DART team, have they been visaed? Do we have anyone on the ground yet? Chinese, Russian, and others are there in large numbers. We have some soldiers from Japan who've deployed. But as I understand it, we don't have any teams on the ground yet. It's been, Friday, Saturday, it's been 4 days since the earthquake. Every day is critical. And this is apparently a direct result of USAID cutbacks in terms of the ability to launch quickly and to have a team actually in country. And secondly, I wanted to ask about VOA. There was a TRO on Friday night. Those people have received notices. As I understand it, they're off the air. They have no access, I don't believe, to their offices or their emails. And in response to the temporary restraining order Friday night, what is going to change, or will it not change pending appeal? I know you don't talk about lawsuits, but this involves an agency that is directly involved with the State Department and with our fellow journalists.
Well, we don't talk about lawsuits and the nature of what's going on, regardless of whether it's an agency dealing with us or not dealing with us. That rule does not change. But let me get to Burma as well. So obviously, you've heard my opening. We send our condolences to everyone. But what we do know, and I would caution you, though, I would reject the notion that this is obviously a result of the USAID cuts and that kind of funding. There are many different elements to this dynamic, and we're also certainly in the region. We're on the ground. I can say that could be within. Well, hopefully by this evening, that we will be added to the embassy's team's assessments of needs on the ground, and that will further inform our response. But keep in mind, of course, we've got a mission there and a team of people that these experts then will be joining. And as people know, we're providing up to $2 million through existing humanitarian partners in Burma who are working right now to support the earthquake-affected communities. For the emergency shelter, food, medical, and water. So people are on the ground. We have partners that we are working with to facilitate the nature of things as they're happening at this point.
But in the past, during earthquakes, the Fairfax team with their dogs and their expertise would go all over the world. Turkey, in instances, I think Iran as well. As the Israeli team would join. I mean, there are experts that we have always provided.
Sure.
And we physically, or in contrast to what we see visually, people digging by hand and by equipment, people out with China on the back of their yellow jackets. We don't see any presence of U.S.
Well,
I
would caution that obviously right now, people are working to get this solved, to find people, to rescue people, to get people what they need, life-saving mechanisms. And the good news is, and I think we should look at it this way as well, is that we have partners that we work with that may not require us to be physically present in the nature of what it is that's being done. Partners who've been on the ground regularly, there constantly. And I think that would reject the premise that the sign of success is that we are physically there. Obviously, we are now through our missions, and we're sending experts as well. Of course, that's happening. But I think that the fact that we've got partners that we work with, that our goals can be achieved through the work that we do with others around the world, is something. When I've said this in general with the reform that the government is going through with the lead of President Trump, is that certain things won't necessarily look the same. But the success and the work and our impact will still be there. And this perhaps is part of that dynamic. So I would say that, of course, not just when it comes to our experts, who are also not just on their way, but based in Bangkok, Thailand, the Manila, Philippines, and Washington, that we are doing work from here. We have remarkable partners we're working with on the ground, and we remain in communication with our international partners, including the Quad, which is Australia, India, and Japan, to ensure effective coordination with each respective nation's response efforts. We're also pleased to see other donors provide assistance in the aftermath of the earthquake. And I'll tell you, it is the people of Burma who are getting the urgent aid that they need right now, and that we are certainly, again, pleased when it comes to whatever donors are going in the region to assist those individuals. And we are part of that framework. That's, I think, what's most important here, and a reminder that the aid can continue, and it may simply look different, and it may involve more partners, but we certainly are focused on this, and we'll have more information for you this evening. All right. Yes, go ahead.
On the deportations, the Secretary announced this morning.
So are we done? Do we want to, 1 second, any more questions on Burma? Do you want? Yes, sir, go ahead, and then we'll come right back.
Question.
Sure.
Can you tell us when you received the formal request from the authorities there and what they were asking for specifically?
You know, I can tell you that we have finally received a formal request. I did not get exactly when that came in, but we do have the formal request. So that has unlocked a bit more of what we now are able to do. And so when we think about what's happening and what are the effects of that determines our ability of where we move and how we do it, that certainly, that part of the protocol has finally happened.
And can you say what they requested specifically?
I can't at this point, no.
Okay.
Yes. All right, let's go.
What authority was used to deport these 17 alleged gang members to El Salvador?
What I
The
can,
Alien Enemies Act?
Sure. There is a few things, including a tweet and a statement from the Secretary. And I'm going to get that for you right now. Hold on here. Because this is part of what we do know, of course. I think what's important is the fact that the President and the Secretary have made it very clear, well, really from day one, that the security of the United States is top priority, the nature of the crime that's happening here, and the ability of our nation to remain a sovereign and safe and secure
Sure, but can
nation.
you say yes or no, was the Alien Enemies Act invoked to be able to deport these 17 individuals?
I
and how does that
cannot, when we're thinking about the legal process, I'm going to try to tell you what the things that I can comment on and what I can talk about, and I can't really discuss that at this point.
Would that not be a violation of the federal court order? If
I'm
the
not going
Alien
to be
Enemies Act
speaking
was
on any of that aspect. That, of course, is something you can also ask the White House about, and DHS. I think that is perhaps where your question should be put, but I'm not going to comment on any legal aspects regarding this. Yes, sir.
Sorry.
Thank you so much. Jahan Devani from Airway News. Majority of the Americans believe that President Trump is a blessing.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Majority of the Americans believe that President Trump is not only a blessing for this country, but a blessing for the whole world. He's a peacemaker. But in many parts of the world, like Indian-occupied Kashmir, Afghanistan, and in many African nations, people are waiting for President to help his bold decision to lift them out of misery. So people believe and know that President Trump will make America great again, but will he make this world great again?
Is that easy? It's like, okay. Well, I support President Trump, and I think that the majority of Americans who gave him this mandate understand that that's what is possible. We saw that happen in the first term. We've seen the nature of his impact even as a businessman in the United States when it comes to the impact on cities and states and the country as a whole, to the point where the American people made him the President of the United States. Clearly, a financially stable America, a strong America, for as long as we've been here, has made the difference in the safety and security of the rest of the world. That is the kind of dynamic that the world wants and expects. President Trump embodies the nature of our original founding about what America is for and the nature of what it can accomplish when it comes to sticking with its values and making sure that we're safe and secure and that we respect ourselves and implement our values.
I have one more.
And when that happens, the rest of the world is safer and more secure.
I have
All
one
right,
more-
sure.
Thank you. U.S. Commission on Religious Freedom recently released their annual report and recommends to put India into CPC list, country of particular concern. U.S. Commission also requested Secretary Rubio to put sanctions on Indian intelligence agency, RAW, for their involvement in the murder plot of a U.S. citizen and harassment of journalists, academics based here in the U.S. So is U.S. State Department going to consider these recommendations from the
Well,
Commission?
as I will not discuss negotiations or diplomatic considerations in that manner at all, but I do, let's take a look at where that stands and the reference to that. But that's not something that is I'm going to be commenting on. Yes, Nadia.
Thank you. A few questions on the Middle East. Number one, the Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara announced the formation of his new government, which includes a woman, an Alawite, a Druze, and a Kurd. Is this inclusive enough for this administration, and will you lift some sanctions? And also, I have a question on Iran. They're saying that they're not going to negotiate under pressure. So is there a time limit for them to come to the negotiation table? Is this any other options that the administration will consider?
All right, well, let me answer you about Syria, that we are aware of the announcement on Saturday of the interim authorities by the interim authorities of a transitional cabinet in Syria. We recognize the struggles of the Syrian people who have suffered decades under despotic rule and oppression of the Assad regime, and we hope this announcement represents a positive step for an inclusive and representative Syria. However, Syria's interim authorities should fully renounce and suppress terrorism, exclude foreign terrorist fighters from any official roles, prevent Iran and its proxies from exploiting Syrian territory, take meaningful steps to verifiably destroy Assad's chemical weapons, assist in the recovery of U.S. and other citizens who have been disappeared in Syria, and ensure the security and freedoms of Syria's religious and ethnic minorities. The United States will continue to assess the interim authorities' behavior and determine our next step based on those actions. You mentioned about sanctions. Any adjustment to U.S. policy towards Syria's interim authorities will be contingent on all of those steps being taken that I mentioned to you. And your other question was?
On Iran, that they said they're not going to negotiate under pressure. So is this a time limit?
Yes. Iran's behavior across the globe threatens U.S. national interests, which is why President Trump reimposed the maximum pressure campaign designed to end Iran's nuclear threat, curtail its ballistic missile program, and stop it from supporting terrorist groups. As the president has said, Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. He has also been very clear that the United States can't allow that to occur. The president expressed his willingness to discuss a deal with Iran, as we know. If the Iranian regime does not want a deal, the president is clear he will pursue other options, which will be very bad for Iran.
Can I
All right.
follow up
Yes,
on
sir.
that?
Go ahead.
On Gaza, the UN's Humanitarian Affairs Office has said that 15 paramedics, civil defense, and a UN worker were killed, in their words, one by one by the IDF. They have dug bodies up, they said, in the shallow grave that have been gathered up, and also vehicles in the sand. Have you got any assessment of what might have happened, and given the potential use of American weapons, is there any assessment of whether or not this complied with international law?
Well, I can tell you that for too long, Hamas has abused civilian infrastructure, cynically using it to shield themselves. Hamas's actions have caused humanitarians to be caught in the crossfire. The use of civilians or civilian objects to shield or impede military operations is itself a violation of international humanitarian law. And of course, we expect all parties on the ground to comply with international humanitarian law.
But it's specifically a question on any. It's a question about accounting and accountability, given that it may have been the use of US weapons. So it's a question about the State Department rather than Hamas. Is there any action to
Well,
assess?
every single thing that is happening in Gaza is happening because of Hamas. Every single dynamic. I'll say again, I've said it, I think, in every briefing. All of this could stop in a moment If Hamas returned all the hostages and the hostage bodies they are still holding and put down its weapons, there is one entity that could stop it for everyone in a moment, and that is Hamas. All loss of life is regrettable. It's key, obviously. Whoever it is, wherever they live. And this has been the nature of what fuels Secretary Rubio and President Trump in their willingness to expend this kind of capital early on in this term to make a difference and to change the situation. So I think that is the one thing that remains clear in all of this, which is all for all of us, which is why we work to stop it.
I know that's
a horrible
your position.
dynamic.
Is there
Yes,
any
Humaira.
process in this
Humaira.
Hi, Tammy. Just to follow up from Jenny, are you able to say if these deportations of alleged gang members, Venezuelans, are these going to continue? And while you can't say under which authority they were deported, are you able to say which authority they will be deported if there would be new ones?
No, I can't speculate.
Different way of
It's
asking the same question
hypotheticals in a certain sense. Obviously, also, we have not announced who's on that plane. The details, I'm not going to accept the premise immediately of who is on that plane. That's not what I can do here at this podium. What I do know, again, is that every action that is taken by this administration is to fulfill the promise that elected them to office that the American people want, which is to have a safe community, which is to be able to live their lives knowing that perhaps the next day will come and that the future for their children and grandchildren will be maybe a little bit better than theirs has been. So this is that larger picture. But I'm not going to get into the details of a particular flight.
Are you able to say confidently that the TRO wasn't violated?
I'm not here to give you my legal opinion. I'm not a lawyer, or to speculate on what is or is not happening in any fashion in that regard. Yes, sir. With the glasses here.
Thank you, Tammy. Someday the State Department's going to make the mistake of hiring a lawyer to be a spokesperson, and then they're like,
Well, then it would be even less interesting than mine.
Two questions for you. Number one, a few weeks after President Trump's Shalom Hamas tweet or social media post, Israeli authorities giving indication that they're preparing for a potential larger-scale military operation in Rafah, potential reoccupation of Gaza. I wanted to get some insight as to whether there is coordination between the U.S. and Israel on that front, whether the State Department takes a position on Israel's potential plans. The second question was, Israeli officials have been sounding the alarm about Egypt's military operations in Sinai, saying that it's a potential violation of the peace treaty between the two countries. Any position from the State Department in regards to Egypt's activities and whether they deem it a violation of the peace treaty?
Well, we never speak about ongoing diplomatic relationships, but we do have the pillars of our approach that remain resolute. We stand with Israel, and we stand for peace. President Trump has made clear the consequences of what will happen if Hamas continues to hold hostages. I will leave it at that, but of course add in the fact that Secretary Rubio has been as aggressive in his rhetoric that Hamas cannot continue to exist, and again, that we stand with Israel and their efforts to defend themselves.
On Egypt,
yes, ma'am.
Can you give me anything on Egypt?
Thank you, Terry.
You had said earlier this month that the deadline for the State Department to submit a report to the President detailing recommendations for visa and travel restrictions, as outlined in an executive order he signed in January, had been moved from March 21st. What is the new date for that report, and what is the status of those recommendations?
Well, what I said at the time when asked is that was a target date that no longer applies, without giving you details. So there was no deadline in that regard. But the State Department, like every department in President Trump's administration, are acting on executive orders, including this one.
Why was it postponed?
I can't speak to that, but I can tell you that we're working on what the executive order asked for, which is not travel bans, of course, but the nature of restrictions from other countries, whether or not they meet the standard of security and vetting that's required for entry into the United States.
So has a new date been set yet?
No. But again, it's not, because there's not a date, It doesn't mean that it's not being worked on. So we are all working to implement what President Trump has ordered. Yes, sir, in the back right there. But, no, in front here, sir.
Thank you. Tom Watkins at the National. 2 questions. On the subject of student deportations, several pro-Israel activist groups are providing US authorities with the names of people involved in last year's pro-Palestinian protests. Among those names are naturalized Americans, people originally from the Middle East but who are now US citizens. Can you tell me, is
that any department in the government's having, let alone the State Department? What I can tell you is, as just repeating what Secretary Rubio has said, is that if you come into this country, if you've lied to get in this country, and you've come into this country and have committed crimes, or have clearly, if you've done something, whereas if you told us you were going to do it when you were applying for that visa, you would never have gotten that visa. And we're going to be very aggressive in the nature of acting on that. He's made that very clear. But I won't discuss the nature of decision-making in that framework or speculate on the nature of what the department will be doing.
Who's become a naturalized U.S. citizen could still be.
Don't draw conclusions because I'm not answering your question.
Okay.
that's a big. No, that's not what I said. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. Next month, the United States is going to open the largest consulate in Erbil, the Kurdistan region capital. Do you have any plan to increase the region's diplomatic presence or adding additional services to that mission? And adding to that question, the Kurdistan region had an election on October 2024, and still there is a discussion among the political parties to form a new government. Could you provide me any comment on that, and were there any engagement with this political party to form a new government and having a unified Peshmerga forces?
Well, here's what I can tell you. With this opening of the new and largest U.S. consulate in Erbil next month, we are. It's actually expected, I think, to open later this year. It reflects the United States' commitment to the Iraqi Kurdistan region. The new consulate will strengthen our partnership and diplomatic cooperation with the Kurdistan regional government and the government of Iraq on shared priorities and challenges, including countering extremism and fostering long-term peace. Secondly, on the IKR government, I can tell you that we're thinking about we've formed, when it comes to the forming of a government for the 2 zones, and if there's a united force there under the umbrella of that movement, we're going to refer you to the Kurdistan regional government to speak about the internal domestic affairs issues that you might be concerned about and involved with your questions. We have encouraged all sides to swiftly form a government. And a strong and resilient democracy, as we speak about often in the Iraqi Kurdistan region, is necessary to preserve the stability and security of Iraq. So we encourage them to form that government and to do so quickly. All right. Yes, go ahead, Camille.
Thank you. Sorry, we're jumping around a bit. Different topics.
Well, it's happened, so here we are. I've got my seatbelt on.
So just going back to the visa revocations, there's a group called Betar that has told CBS that they have provided thousands of names to the Trump administration of visa holders and naturalized foreigners who, quote, come to the West to rage against America and support U.S. designated terrorist organizations. Can you confirm whether that organization is providing lists to the Trump administration and whether those lists are being taken by the State Department and DHS to do any of this work?
The Trump administration, I'm not involved in those decisions, and I certainly can't speak on them, certainly in general, not for the State Department. That goes through the framework of the work that we're doing. Whether it exists or not, I won't confirm. It's a matter of, we've got broad authority, certainly, but how they're coming to those decisions for the consular offices and visas, we will not discuss not only individual visas, but the process of what goes through in determining what happens with individuals and visas and whether they're issued or if they're revoked. So I won't be talking about that today. Yes, Nick?
Thank you. Back to Iran. Iran's president yesterday ruled out direct negotiations with the United States on its nuclear program. Was that what the United States was seeking, direct negotiations, or would the United States be open to third-party intermediaries?
We know, of course, that the Iranian regime has always been hostile to the United States and our allies and partners, and they are one of the leading state sponsors of terror, as we know. It supports Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and other terrorist networks. Iran's own Islamic Revolutionary Guards is a designated foreign terrorist organization, and many regime leaders have also been designated as terrorists. I can tell you that in negotiating, which I've already answered to some degree, is that the president's made it clear that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And what we want from them, as Secretary Rubio has said, under Donald Trump, there is not going to be a nuclear Iran. Iran must stop its nuclear escalations, its ballistic missile program, its networks and campaign of regional aggressive activities, its repression of the Iranian people's freedom, and the IRGC's destabilizing activities. I also think I can say this to you, that President Trump has been consistent and clear. The United States is determined to make sure that Iran will not acquire a nuclear weapon. He has expressed his willingness to pursue a deal with Iran. If the Iranian regime does not want a deal, as I said earlier, the president has other options, and those alternatives will be very bad for Iran. All right. In the back, yes, sir.
Thank you, Tammy. We'll move to Ukraine, if I may. Today marks 3 years since the world learned about Bucha massacre. I want to get your reflection on that. And second part of the question, yesterday, the president spoke about the minerals deal with Ukraine. It looks like there's a confusion over there, because the president said that he hears that the Ukrainian side is trying to reconsider the deal. But we have seen media reports about the U.S. version the draft was changed. Can you please offer some clarity on that as well? Thanks so much.
Well, I think the president's comments speak for themselves. I do know also that there is one North Star for everyone involved in this, and it is the ceasefire and stopping the carnage. There are certainly some other issues that are, I suppose, discussed, but what matters every single day is wondering who's alive today, who won't be alive tomorrow. And fortunately for us, we don't necessarily walk through our day with that concern. For the people in Ukraine, they do. And I think that President Trump, of course, he knows and he understands, and we operate with the realization that negotiations are going to require both Russia and Ukraine to make tough decisions and compromises. And we are working with Russia and Ukraine, and we're committed to continuing our work to bring them to the negotiating table. We do know that I think there was an idea from Russia about a temporary administration that was not appreciated by the president. Ukraine, I don't think I need to remind everyone, but it's a good reminder, is a constitutional democracy. Governance in Ukraine is determined by its constitution and the Ukrainian people. We are committed to the diplomacy necessary to achieve a full ceasefire and to bring the parties to the negotiating table for a final and lasting settlement. President Trump has made clear that Russia and Ukraine need to move to a full ceasefire now. None of that has changed. All right, all the way in the back, sir. The green tie, is that what we have? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Tammy. Can Asasu for the Turkish Anadolu Agency. Speaking of Ukraine, Mr. Secretary met with his Turkish counterpart last week here in Washington, and he clearly asked Turkey's contribution to reach a ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia. What do you exactly expect from Turkey to play? What kind of role in order to reach that peace deal? And if I may ask, I have another question about France. The French court has decided that the far-right opposition leader, or the far-right leader, Marine Le Pen, will be banned from the
general to the French authorities for further comment on this legal decision. We also will recall, though, the Vice President's February 14th remarks at the Munich Security Conference in defense of free speech, as well as opposition to exclusion of people from the political process. We have got to do more as the West than just talk about democratic values. We must live them. Exclusion of people from the political process is particularly concerning, given the aggressive and corrupt lawfare waged against President Trump here in the United States. We support the right of everyone to offer their views in the public square, agree or disagree. And with that, I have nothing else to add. All right, sir, in the back there, red tie.
Are you sure
Thank you,
that she's far right?
No? She may be conservative. It depends on how far left the left is. Doesn't that always redefine the center? The left always redefines the center. It redefines the center, which was normally a dynamic, and we won't have that conversation, which maybe should be for a seminar. But yes, sir, in the red tie.
Thank you, Tammy. You mentioned at the beginning of today's your presentation, Bangladeshi proud girls are getting honored to receive tomorrow's award. What is Secretary of State's 2025?
I have to tell you, sir, I can't hear you. And is this about Bangladesh?
Yeah, tomorrow is going to be an award ceremony. First Lady and
yes, correct. I'll be there, as a matter of fact, participating as well.
Girls are getting award received from that podium. Do you have any comment on that? The Bangladeshi girls are getting award for their 2024 movement in Bangladesh against fascist Hasina government.
All right,
they are getting award tomorrow.
No,
So
what I'm about to speak about here is the International Women of Courage Awards. But what I'm not going to speculate on is the last part of that question regarding the nature of the politics and unfolding in Bangladesh. But I will take this opportunity to mention again that Secretary of State Marco Rubio and First Lady Melania Trump are hosting the 19th Annual International Women of Courage Awards ceremony at the State Department here tomorrow. The 2025 ceremony will recognize 8 extraordinary women, along with the recipients of the Madeleine Albright Honorary Group IWOC Award from around the world who are working to build a brighter future for everyone. The Secretary of State's IWOC Awards, as we call them, recognizes women from around the world who have demonstrated exceptional courage, strength, and leadership. The awardees are advocates for peace, justice, human rights, and empowerment of women and girls. They often face great personal risks to their safety as a result of their efforts. Since 2007, the Department of State has recognized more than 200 women from over 90 countries with the IWOC Award. U.S. diplomatic missions overseas nominate one woman of courage from their respective host countries, and finalists are selected and approved by senior department officials. Following the ceremony, the awardees will participate in the International Visitor Leadership Program Exchange in Washington, D.C., and additional programming in Los Angeles, during which they will meet with American counterparts on strategies to further their work to empower women and girls around the globe.
Right.
All right, I'm getting the roundabout wrap up here, and we will have another briefing on Wednesday, which, even though we are going on our trip starting on Wednesday for NATO, we will have a briefing on Wednesday as well. We'll have more details of what we'll be doing there in Brussels. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Who's far right?